Welcome to the rabbit hole that is reality. We aim to engage, to inform and to inspire with a social commentary and topical talk of the week's goings on that really should have us asking questions. rabbithole.thatisreality.co.uk is the place where you can go to listen, to download and watch every episode that has been produced so far. You can also listen to the premiere broadcast on the UK Collapse Radio Network that is currently on a Thursday. We move next week to a Sunday. That's right, Sunday 8 PM. Make sure you got it down in your calendar, guys, on the UK Collapse Radio Network, and that is ukcollapseradio.com. A big thank you for taking the time out to join us here tonight as we air, whenever and wherever you're choosing to listen to us on the World Wide Web today. So let's find out what we've got coming up in the show tonight. Up for discussion tonight, we're going to be talking about a study published this past week entitled Crime, Weather and Climate Change, published by Apt Associates and written by Dr. Michael Ranson. He puts forth that global warming will cause more rape. IBM reveal a new technology that could potentially generate enough output for the entire planet. The FDA wants to monitor all social networking and online chats when talking about its products, and it wishes the government's assistance. Hyundai are bringing hydroponics into the home. And I'll talk to you guys about an incident that happened last week, in fact, regarding an interview on the show. We delve in also to a document. This will be our feature tonight. Is rather actually two documents, in fact, published by the Ministry of Defence. Global Strategic Trends and Planning for Great Britain from 2007 to 2036 and also 2040 and beyond. That's right, they really are planning a long way in advance. And as promised, after last week's overrun, we wanted to get into some Fortean stories that are true, absolutely true in every kind of way, but they just defy common sense or are just downright strange, and guarantee you to leave you with a smile as we go off. So this is the rabbit hole that is reality. This is episode 21. My name is Kristian Landa. Please follow me on Twitter at @DefineChristian. Follow Rabbit Hole That Is Reality on Facebook, Google+. Follow us also on iTunes and YouTube. So get in touch with the show. Send us a message. Tell us what you like. Also on this airing, comment on anything you want to. Play. It's up to you. Also, this episode is Creative Commons. Feel free to share and share alike. Well, Sylvia is going to be joining us on the other side of the break that is. She's currently at work and she'll be back here soon. Of course, we're probably to record on a different day, really. So let's just talk about what we've got going on in our own lives, really. Today, in fact, earlier today, I got home from my friend's house, got home from work, and we have, so sat behind me presently, in fact, is my green screen. That's right, my green screen has arrived. Also, as well as my lighting rig as well, that's also arrived. My spotlights, my pen studio lights have also arrived. So, in fact, I turned them on earlier and I almost got blinded because they both came on. So this is going to certainly lead to a few new avenues, not just for Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, not just for doing studio recording, but also getting some proper interviews doing. We could use this effectively as a mobile set, which is really useful. And we've had a little bit of a play using some video editing software already, how you can integrate it into our video. And it seems to be okay. You've got to find the right balance between obviously a green screen, and a picture and myself here, sat in this funky cream chair. The thing is, when you've got new toys to play with, the ideas just come naturally. So anyway, that's enough of me ranting about myself. Really, let's talk about what we've got going on the show today. Yes, this study comes out of Harvard, in fact, but it's published by Apt Associates. Let's have a look at the guy. So this was published in the Journal of Environmental Economics and Management. It came out this week. And to take a bit of an abstract from it, really, the paper estimates the impact of climate change on the prevalence of criminal activity across the United States. The analysis is based on a 30-year panel of monthly crime and weather data across the 2,997 US counties, and they're trying to identify the effect of weather on the monthly crime rate using an estimator and controlling a month-by-month, county-by-year fixed effects. The study shows that the results show that temperature has a strong positive effect on criminal behaviour, with little evidence of lagged impacts. Now, between 2010 and 2099, climate change will cause an additional, according to the figures and statistical probability, 22,000 murders, 180,000 cases of rape, 1.2 million aggravated assaults, along with 2.3 million assaults and burglaries, larceny, and cases of vehicle theft across the United States. basically blaming climate change. Certainly, as climate has changed, and as we effectively go through a warming period, what will effectively occur is that there will be more violence, more rapes, more aggravated assaults, and so on. Now, as I said, this actually came out of the Harvard University dissertation, published by Apt Associates, and it's an interesting document. It's certainly an interesting claim, but when you start thinking about it, correlation does not imply causation. So I think there's a statistical correlation that they're using, but does it imply that this is actually going to be the case? So what do you think about that? Do you really think that as global warming heats up, we're actually going to see more accounts of rape, more accounts of extreme violence? It's true to say, in fact, that even Greenpeace themselves state, and I claim, and I quote rather, there is no scientific proof that human emissions of carbon dioxide are the dominant cause of warming in the Earth's atmosphere over the last 100 years. That was the Greenpeace co-founder and former member Patrick Moore, and he said it in a statement at the Senate committee this last Tuesday, in fact. Today we do live in an unusually cold period in history of the life of the Earth, and there's no reason to believe that a warmer climate would be anything but beneficial for humans and the majority of other species. So here you have, effectively, Greenpeace is possibly the most well-known of all the campaign groups. Obviously they do a lot of activity when it comes to their activism. Also this week, in fact, we had the National Snow and Ice Data Centre reveal that, in fact, Antarctica is actually getting bigger. It really is. Antarctica is actually getting bigger. In fact, it's now at its biggest extent since measurements actually first began in 1979. So, how does this work? How does this fit in with the climate change agenda, for lack of a better word? I mean, climate change is certainly happening, but climate change is not an event that has just happened. Climate is forever changing. It's a forever cycle. It's been here since the Earth has been here. It's constantly changing due to things like, air pressure, water pressure, the amount of cloud in the atmosphere, the amount of land mass there is, what drives, water up, precipitation, and so on. To say that climate change is a man-made occurrence, we certainly, as a species, are not doing anything to help the fucking Earth. Believe me, we're fucking not. You can't help but just look on the internet to see the kind of devastating effect that we're actually having as a virus of this Earth on our environment. We are immediately polluting our local reservoirs. We are immediately polluting our oceans. We are damaging the Earth beyond agriculture. We're damaging it, and we're polluting it in ways that are unimaginable. It's driven mainly by the monetary system and its need to consume and its need to waste. Now, perhaps I'm going slightly off topic here, going towards other areas of the global warming question. So let's swing it back to this study. It just goes to show, really, that all these cycles that we see and we experience and we observe and they're a part of are all intricately linked together, in which we indeed do have a part to play. But really, when it comes to crime, there's a personal responsibility aspect that's much more important. Whether it's hot or whether it's cold, people choose to make those choices to commit assault. People choose to make those choices whether they wish to engage in a sexual violation of another person. Not to mention the abhorrent behaviour of murder. So really it comes down to personal choice and personal responsibility. Something that the Western world particularly relies on is electricity. Everything from our smartphones to our TVs to our fridges to our freezers and all the things that are in our house. In fact, the entire smart system technology grid relies on electricity. And isn't it interesting, of course, we're hearing stories that there's not enough power. Electricity costs so much. But in fact, electricity in itself actually is in complete abundance. Well, there was an announcement made last Earth Day, that was April 22nd in 2013, when IBM made a revolutionary announcement. That is, they're going to pursue their collaboration with a number of different companies to create a solar cell designed to convert 2,000 times the amount of energy currently being taken in by a solar cell. So that's right, you have your solar powered panels. Well, they announced that basically they could super generate that by 2,000 times by converting the incoming radiation, i.e. the amount of solar radiation coming in, and making it more useful. Because unfortunately, most of the light that comes in is not used. Only a small amount of the light coming from the sun that hits your solar panel is actually being used to be converted into electricity. So they actually wanted to make it much more efficient to do so. So here we are, we're now 1 year into this research program, and of the 2.4 million grant that was given by the Swiss Commission of Technology and Innovation that was awarded to IBM Research to do this. And on a complete side note there, the Swiss Commission for Technology and Innovation is one of the companies that has had its accounts frozen by the European Union. Do you remember, if you listened to last week's show, you'll know that, of course, the Swiss posted in a democratically way that they wanted to put a cap on immigration. So the EU, who didn't like that, they decided to stop all research grants and educational projects in Switzerland. Yay, go EU, that makes a lot of sense. It's now gone beyond the prototype stage. So what we're talking about here, right, we're talking about photovoltaic materials, i.e. actual material itself that absorbs the power of the sun. The thing is about solar materials these days, they're actually really expensive to produce, and they're actually quite slow to produce as well, especially on a vast scale, needed to be reliable for, say, a country. So where are we at with this? Well, first of all, let's describe a bit more about what this is. It's called the HCPVT system, and basically it's going to use a large parabolic dish made from lots of different mirrors, and they're going to be attached to a sun tracking system. And the tracking system is going to follow the sun as it goes over to capture the best angle of the sun's rays at all times of the day, well, until night, of course, and then reflect the mirrors into several micro-channel receivers inside that will hit photovoltaic chips and therefore convert 1 centimetre of space being absorbed by the sun to convert it into 50 watts, typically 8 hours a day in a sunny region. So what they're talking about doing is putting one of these, not just one of them, a large number of these in the Sahara. Makes a lot of sense. You know, the Sahara perhaps is the most arid area of the planet. Now, without going into the techno-babble Star Trek Voyager stuff, we're going to try and keep this on a level for everyone to understand and the benefits of it as well. The way that it will work is that the sunlight will come in, it'll actually be absorbed, and it'll be concentrated by basically a series of mirrors and a series of compressions and cooling that will, in fact, that allow the solar concentration to have come in to be elevated by 2,000 times and be kept at a safe temperature up to solar concentration of 5,000 times. So really, they're saying that the cooling system they have developed, that is using its very small pumping power, inspired by the blood system of the human body, oddly enough, and has already been tested by IBM in high-performance computers. And they're already using it as part of the concentration photovoltaic systems in terms of how they're doing water desalination and what's called the cool air projects. So this stuff already works. They already know it does. It's just a matter of being able to take in that amount of energy, solar energy, and they're saying, really, that they'll be able to power the entire Earth with enough of these. They're low cost, low material, low maintenance, simple to do. Photovoltaic materials are very simple and very cheap, in fact. So this could lead to a whole new energy revolution. So here's hoping it continues. They've got another announcement coming out around April time in regards to how well they've done it this past year, and I look forward to it. Hopefully you are too. Now, over in the US, you have an organisation, a corporation, run by the government, called the FDA, the Food Drug Administration. They kind of look after the labelling, the food, the what gets into food, what gets not into food, and so on, and drugs, and the big pharma industry. Well, this story caught my eye because it says they're looking for an outside contractor to monitor social networking, media chatter about drugs, food, and other products that it regulates, and how that chatter shifts as a result of risk warnings and solicitation. The agency is looking for a contractor to provide historical information of the sorts of conversations that people have about products that people are having on their blogs, message boards, social media sites, about all products that the FDA regulates, drugs, food, tobacco, medical services, and they will then track with a sentiment of volume of how those conversations shift. And also, they want to be able to watch the trends, and how conversations spike, rise slowly, trend upwards, trend downwards. The notice says, and I'll post the notice below, and it talks about how can a social media buzz be generated, or how one can be toned down on the most popular forums of online discussion, news sites, themes of discussion, sentiment analysis, that kind of thing, word clouds, and a sample of consumer comments. Now, they want to be able to do what was that? They want to be able to how to tone down conversations when perhaps a certain story breaks. Whether that be pink slime of the McDonald's fame, or whether it be a product withdrawal. How fast can information get out there to stop a product, or how quickly can they push it into the carpet so no one actually notices? Now we all know that there's indeed, what should we say, insider dealings. There's lots of corruption claims and statements held against the FDA in terms of the corporations that are out there. So I'm pretty sure they're going to be wanting to share this with those. How to monitor, how to ascertain, and how to manipulate public opinion. It's powerful stuff when you think about it. Don't you just love big data? Now, one conversation that's quite regular, that I do hear on a very regular basis, is how to be less reliant on going to the supermarket and buying ready meals, for instance, packet soups, packet meals, processed foods. How to be a little more self-sufficient. Well, thanks to Hyundai, you can now do it at home. Now, of course, we can, put that little box in front of the window and grow some strawberries. We can go into the garden. But in this modern urban lifestyle that we have, where most people are, have very small houses, live in apartments, live in flats, in tower blocks and so on, a lot of people don't simply have the space in order to grow their own food, in order to be a little more self-sufficient. And often a lot of people don't have the time. It's not that they don't want to. It's time is also a huge factor. So what Hyundai have done, they've actually developed a fridge-sized device. Shall we say device? Okay, it's actually come out of the Hyundai's engineering and construction division from their South Korean team. Let's talk about it a bit more. So, indoor gardening is really what it is. Indoor gardening solutions. We can talk about window farming kits. We can talk about high-tech stuff, which I guess this is what it is. The nano garden, as it's being branded, all fit into that category of the high-tech stuff. So it enables people to grow vegetables, herbs, and greens in their kitchen. So the nano garden is a kind of vegetable garden for the apartment kitchen. It's using a system called hydroponics, so we don't have to worry about pesticides, fertilizers. You don't even, sunlight could be an issue. You might have your kitchen window might be facing someone's brick wall, for instance. But the idea about the nano garden, that doesn't have to happen. Instead of sunlight, it's got regulated light that accelerates the growth speed. Now, in fact, you can control the growth speed, is what we're talking about. The amount of light, the amount of water, the amount of nutrient supply is completely controllable. So then you can tailor the growth speed. It lets people know about the amount of water that they need and the nutrients to the plants. It also functions as an air purifier as well. So brilliant technology, very simple. This wins brownie points on sheer idea of convenience. It's the ease of use. It's not really going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's going to be in your house. You can grow fresh food in your kitchen. And what it won't do is it won't replace the community gardens. It won't replace the eco communities that are out there right now. It's actually going to support them as well, because you already have it at home, and then you can distribute them to your friends, your family, and support yourselves and be a bit more self-sufficient and eco-conscious at the same time. Now, it depends on how Hyundai are going to push this and market it. This could take off big time. It really could. So we're going to continue the theme of technology right at this moment. So we're going to move on to a discussion that I just saw, and it's not being highlighted for the reasons and what the story is about. And the link is below. It was by the Daily Reporter, and this story is about a new robotics program that is being discussed. And in fact, it's really an education program. But the underlying story to this, I'll embellish when it comes to. Let me just read you the story, okay? So the director of the vocational education, a guy called Mike Hoffner, presented information at a FANCU robotics program on Wednesday last week, and he says that we've been looking at this project for a year now, and we've been trying to introduce robotics to the community. Now, Ben Miller, who is a BISD staffer, has addressed the board as well. I've actually had opportunity to have a look at this, and they want to discuss how students can get involved with robotics. Now, FANUC curriculum will consist of 80 hours of material handling, operations, programming, an additional 20 hours for IR vision, implementation on convey systems. Now, we're going to get into the meat of the story in a second. So the program is going to be available to senior level students and adults once the program has been completed. It says here students will receive a certification of robot programming and operations. Now this is where the story starts to change slightly. And I quote here, he talks about careers in advanced manufacturing and automotive are going to be huge in this area, unquote, particularly military applications. Also, the business manager and marketing program says, we hope this will bring more students together. So they really are targeting those key bright students who are, of course, they're into the technology, they're into the hardware, they're into the software, they're writing their code. But these are going to be designed for future military applications. We're certainly seeing more and more developments in terms of automated systems and those that are remote controlled. So we're talking about drones here. We're talking about essentially not walking devices, but there was a story we covered a few weeks ago in regards to I think it was California and it was Detroit as well, where they're having robocops. I'm using like quotes here, where they like R2D2 like devices that are going to be armed, that are actually walking tanks that are walking through the streets to make sure these areas are quote unquote safe. So we are certainly seeing developments in those areas, military applications included. And this kind of program here, takes direct students from university or from like late college and adults who have an interest in that area into the qualifications and certainly deliver them to the companies who are producing this kind of output. And we know that, of course, there's not much public sector stuff when it comes to materials like this, but certainly the private sector and therefore private military applications. These are the kind of things that they want. They want to get them out there. We're certainly seeing two industries marrying each other together. So today, the day of recording is Tuesday, the 4th of March, and it's Shrove Tuesday. It's Pancake Day. I'm at work, right? I deal with promotions in store. I order stock and I sell it out and stuff. We've got shitloads of pancake stuff at work, right? Whether it be eggs, it's flour, it's milk, it's fucking pancake mix. Aunt Bess's pancake mix, that's £1. Ready-made pancakes that are made in store. Literally ramming pancakes down people's mouths, man, just to make them buy this stuff. But it surprised me, because I asked every customer I spoke to, right, and I had a conversation with, was, do you know why we celebrate Pancake Day? Do you know what it's all about? Now, there was always two answers. Either it's no, I don't, and the kid thinks it knows, but never says anything. And yes, it's to do with using all your stuff in your cupboard, as tomorrow is Ash Wednesday, and this is your X amount of day Lent promise. Where you choose not to have something for a period of time. Very biblical ideology there, in the sense that you would give up a product or an item. Well, that's a very modern thing, really. So giving up something for Lent. Most women, it's chocolate, and they usually fail it within the first 5 days. For most men, it's like, I'm going to give up cheese. But there's another story that comes into this, a story that isn't really well known. But I know it because in Nottingham, I used to do a tour. Because I'm a historian. I like my myths, I like my legends, and I brought them together, and I conducted the history, myths, and ghosts and urban legends tour. That operated in Nottingham and operated in Hucknall. For like an hour and a half, we used to do tours, alright? Now, on this tour, we would go from Hucknall to a village, literally just outside, and it's called Limby. It's a bit less than a mile away from Hucknall itself. And it used to be at one time the official boundary of Sherwood Forest going to Nottingham. And there's a nice big, huge village stone there to mark that was the place. Until 1663, when it was all cut back and so on. Now, there's a massive placard in this village, right? And it talks about a story on there regarding pancakes. And the story that's on there is thus. It says, while the men were away in the Crusades, so while the men were fighting in their holy wars, over religious ideologies of Christianity, Islam, and everything else in that kind of area, the women of the village were forced to stay at home, look after their families, look after the farmland, and so on. But during the Danes, during the Viking invasions, they came over, they tried to integrate into our society and take over us and so on. As they did, the story is that the women of the village came together and actually fought them. And they won. They won a battle against Vikings. Literally housewomen, as it were. 1400s, not quite sure how big and burly these women actually were, but they actually won a battle against the Vikings. So the women of the village decided to come together and to make something, and what they made was the pancake. And thus the story is that's where the origin of the pancake story lies. That's not to dismiss any other claim of where pancakes have their origin, because they are also just as valid. Because when you think about it, it's only 3 ingredients, right? It's milk, it's eggs, and it's flour. So these things are pretty common. It's only a matter of time before somebody put them together. And this has been your history lesson brought to you by the rabbit hole that is reality, namely myself. Hey, maybe I should go and take my dictaphone or get someone to bring the camcorder and stuff, and actually go and record the entire tour. And like the other sections between like points of conversation, it can do that like kind of like time-lapse video, and then it just goes into the next recording. I may well go and do that. It can be a fun YouTube video at the same time, so watch the space. From local history, how about we jump now to the outer atmosphere of our planet, our tiny small mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam, as Carl Sagan so eloquently put it. Now, surrounding our planet, in fact, surrounding our atmosphere, is something called the Van Allen radiation belts. Now, they actually serve no real purpose, right? Well, that's actually an if. That is a possibility. They might not have any reason to be there, despite the fact they've obviously been created there by the Earth being here for 4.3 billion years. Never mind that we've only literally just discovered them, really. We first thought there was 2. We've actually discovered there's 3. Now, so these Van Allen belts, right, they're pesky bands of radiation, as it says, that they allegedly serve no purpose. Now, they're choking up our Earth's atmosphere, allegedly, and the radiation can harm people and satellite equipment as it passes through the atmosphere. So physicists want to use the strategy of using radio transmitters, in particular the HARP system, in order to project them away, using very low frequency waves into the belt to break them up and to disperse them. Now, do you think it's a smart idea to disperse radiation belts around the Earth that have been created naturally by the Earth's magnetic fields? Do you think that's a smart, really good idea? In fact, the other alternative is to blow a nuke in orbit to see if it has the same effect. I'm not kidding. They really are intending to do these as possibilities to move this belt either away or to disperse it completely, even though it's been created by the Earth's magnetic field itself. I just thought this is a completely dubious idea. Why would you want to do that? Well, at least somebody thinks it's a really good idea, and this is the direction that we're going in right now. So why would a prominent group of scientists want to get these belts gone? Why would they want to eradicate these belts? Well, in many ways, it's understandable to a degree, because there are frustration when it comes to launching satellites. You can't see very well with a telescope, and launching a human being through one of these things, it's not really happening very well. So there's a growing group of astrophysicists who have decided they're going to wipe them out completely. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if there's a decent scientific argument to this, really, considering there can be very, very negative effects, because we don't actually know what they do. Not really. But what they are is these huge, like, dual-lobe areas of space that are around the Earth, and they're filled with really high-velocity charged particles. And literally, they are talking like these particles are travelling so fast. It's like the Earth has its very own particle accelerator in space, which is the story that broke a couple of years ago. So we now know there's 3 of these Van Allen belts, not Van Halen belts, Van Allen belts, and so in these areas, particles are sped up to literally a super fantastical speed. But these belts pulse and change, and they move with the seasons. So missions like launching satellites and people out into space comes with a bit of a danger. I say a bit, there's a huge danger really. And of course it's the cost, putting people up there, the cost of putting satellites into orbit. That, in fact, did you know even satellites have to actually be turned off periodically as the belt swings around in order to avoid damage from this belt? Does it make sense they want to disperse this belt around the Earth? Well, it does financially, but of course we don't actually know what will happen if they go. That's the theory. Should these dissipate, what will happen next? So there's 2 ways they're proposing to do this. One, of course, is HARP, or SCAT, or NERC that they have here in the UK, all very similar. But also there's what's called high volt. which is an older idea, and they want to get rid of it by using what's called high voltage orbital long tethering. So they'd lay a system of cables around the Earth from space, 100 kilometers long, and they're going to use to create their own magnetic field that will deflect the orbit of these particles, i.e. redirecting them, which could hypothetically change the orbital period of these particles that will either crash into the atmosphere or they'll be projected off into space. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think these two ideas are viable? Do you think it's a really good idea to get rid of what effectively the Earth has created, the solar system has created naturally around the Earth, just so we can put some satellites into orbit a little cheaper? So message me on Twitter at @DefineKristian. You can message the Facebook group, Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. Leave a comment also on the website, rabbithole.thatisreality.co.uk, whether you think this is a good idea. But what is a really good idea is we're going to pause for thought, and we're going to take a break. We're going to play some music, a couple of messages, and we're going to come back on the other side, where we're going to be discussing two Ministry of Defence documents in regards to the strategic plans for the future of this country and the world. And also we're going to have a Fortean special. We're going to have an extended session of Fortean stories of things that are funny, things that are just crazy, what actually are real, and just guaranteed to make you smile. This is the Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. My name is Kristian Lander, and I will see you on the other side.
One of the great revelations of the age of space exploration is the image of the Earth, finite and lonely, somehow vulnerable, bearing the entire human species through the oceans of space and time.
Here we are on a planet which is about 5,000 million years old. The sun around which it goes is not much older. It is part of a galaxy which is perhaps 10 or 12,000 million years old, which is one of perhaps hundreds of thousands of millions of other galaxies. Humans have been on this planet for something like 1 million years, and for the vast bulk of that time, things changed extremely slowly. The population increased very slowly, our technology increased, improved, but by very slow steps. And just recently, we had a huge increase. You know, this is what's called an exponential. It's flat for a long time, and then, boom, increase in population, increase in technology, increase in pollution, increase in our powers to disturb the environment, to change the planetary environment. But we're the same old human beings as we were 1,000 years ago and 100,000 years ago. Not much has changed with us. And so it's very hard for us to catch on that there's a new situation, and we have to adapt to it. On the other hand, that's one thing we humans are good at, adapting, figuring out. We're smart. That's our principal advantage over all the other species. I mean, we're not faster, stronger, better diggers. We don't fly all by ourselves. What we do is figure out and build because of our hands. The ancient myth makers knew we're children equally of the earth and the sky. In our tenure on this planet, we've accumulated dangerous evolutionary baggage, propensities for aggression and ritual, submission to leaders, hostility to outsiders, all of which puts our survival in some doubt. But we've also acquired compassion for others, love for our children, a desire to learn from history and experience, and a great, soaring, passionate intelligence, the clear tools for our continued survival.
The Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. Across the spectrum of topical talk, news that raises an eyebrow, science, technology, the environment, mysteries, strange tales, and the Fortean that is both informative and entertaining. As you spread our wings and catch our stride, you can find us now on the web, rabbithole.thatisreality.co.uk, where you can listen, download, and watch all the episodes produced so far. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/rabbithole.thatisreality, or follow the presenters on Twitter at DefineKristian and at Sylvia Dragoon for commentary, insight, and conversation. This is the Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. is The Other Side. This is the Rabbit Hole is Reality. My name is Kristian Lambda. Thank you for joining us here again. I'm joined now by...
Sylvie Waits. Hello.
Hello. So you finally got back in from work?
Yeah, finally.
Oh, don't sit there yawning. Not that boring.
What can I say? Well, it was really tiring.
Work was tiring. Okay, fair enough. So how's things with you?
Oh, you know, the usual ups and downs. Sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I'm certainly in a bit of a down right now. It's nah. Do I even say this? I don't know. I just feel like I'm numb right now. And it's really hard to explain how that feels, because there is no texture to the words, because it just feels numb.
Oh, that's probably a conversation for another time.
Yeah, you're probably right. Let's crack on with the show, as I say. So yeah, where were we at? So I found a document. I found two documents, in fact, last week. I posted them on the UK Collapse Facebook group. I don't know if anyone's seen them. I really hope people have. Are you still yawning? Stop it. Stop it.
No, I'm not yawning.
Yeah, sure you are. So yeah, this document, right, I think it's really, really important that people discuss this. People find it. What it is the DCDC Global Strategic Trends Program 2007 to 2036. And the contents of this document are as thus. It's the strategic trends, when I can actually say it without stuttering, is an independent view of the future developed by DCDC, which is a Directorate General of the UK's Ministry of Defence. And this source document is the development of the UK defence policy from now to 2036.
That's a hell of a long time to plan for.
Well, I think if you don't have a plan, it's just a wish. What do we want society to do? What are the kind of things that we're observing? Politically, geopolitically, environmental, and so on. And this document looks to encompass all those different features.
Yeah, that's true. With those sort of things, they change all the time. So to develop a document to plan for that is interesting.
Well, in fact, the probability is actually a big part of this, and about page 6 actually goes into differentiating between will, may, likely, not so likely, based on a number of probability and percentage. I'll read about it. I'll show you in a sec. So now you've only glimpsed this, and I've had a chance to have a good read of this now. So what this book is actually about, really, it's trend watching, historical and theme-based analysis of future strategic content, the analysis of risks, shocks, assessments of probability, frequency, magnitudes, what I was just talking about just now, the identification of defense and security implications of analysis, and building on previous editions. This sets out to be what are the drivers and what are the salient themes for the next 30 years. But bear in mind, this document was published in 2007. Again, for strategic planning up to 2036. Now, the guy who's published this, he's a Director General of the DCDC, and his name is Rear Admiral Chris Parry, CBE. This guy knows his stuff. He's got pretty much his CV in here, and his basis, why this document is produced, and so on. So let's just have a look at the table of contents for the kind of themes that this document is orientating itself around. So there's your general introduction and so on, the method of why they've investigated this stuff, and the percentages and probabilities of these things happening. But then it talks about the key themes: climate change, globalization, global inequality, population and resources, identity and interest, governance and order, knowledge and innovation, drivers of change, dimensions, resource assimilation, and so on. The social dimension of things goes towards strategic shocks, including introduction, the global, resource, social, political, military, science and technology, no Western perspectives coming in, and taking change of certain aspects. Also talking about stress zones around the world, culture and identity, emerging powers, global trends in armed conflicts, global prospects, the urbanization, humanitarian crises, extreme environments like climate change, media and the military, exploration of Mars, the blurring of military and non-military boundaries, volcanic and seismic events, broadcasts to the brain, transhumanism, and so on. So you kind of get the idea of what this document is now about and what kind of aspects they are looking at. And they're completely understandable, because if you don't know what's coming, you don't know what to prepare for.
Yeah, I can kind of see why they'd have to include that massive amount of stuff when they're talking about that far into the future. They'd have to look at the trends, wouldn't they?
What I only recently learned, and I guess I don't know why I didn't learn it before, is that energy companies actually buy their country contracts in 35-year blocks. My friend, whose name I won't mention, he told me this a couple of days ago. He says that energy companies, particularly Eon that we're talking about, SSE, Centrica, they were actually buying. The UK government has to buy from them 35-year blocks of energy output for this country. He's in a position where he would know these things. That's all I can say. So yeah, so the scope when we're talking about resource, social, political, science, technology, military, I mean these are the areas where there has to be development.
Oh yeah, definitely. Or where there will be development.
Well, yeah, exactly. How do you identify what will? So here we are. This is the assessment of probability. We're looking at this now. The description is will that's always listed in italics is will that has a higher than 95% chance of certainty. Likely is a plus 60%, just because of the high confidence of happening. May is a plus 10, a low to medium chance of happening. Unlikely is less than 10% chance of happening.
Seems fairly straightforward.
It does. This is actually a really, really well put together document, well researched. Yeah, these people know what they're talking about. But then again, to literally direct the centre of government, it has to be. It has to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can't send a document in there that's going to be sloppy, can you?
No, not at all. So let's just talk about how they're assessing climate change. Now, this really was the first thing I looked at in this book. Okay, and we're going to look at this. We're going to look at globalization, global inequality, and a few other things in there, which clearly are things that we're talking about, and perhaps the media stuff as well. Because that was really, I only got a chance to look at that this morning, and seeing how the change in the media and the public perceptions right now, they were planning for this 7 years ago.
Oh wow.
Okay. So climate change. This is the introduction to the climate change section, okay? So there is compelling evidence that indicates that climate change is occurring and the atmosphere will, again bold italics, continue to warm at an unprecedented rate in the 21st century. A scientific consensus holds that a large part of the warming is attributed to human activities, primarily through the concentration of CO2 and greenhouse gases. Now we can and cannot dispute that in many different ways. The change will be intensified and accelerated due to natural carbon capture processes such as forests and marine life and the reduction of the polar ice caps. Uncertainty remains as to the precise rate and character of expected changes over the next century. Climate science is extremely complex, with linear cause and effect relationships not readily apparent. Therefore, the consequences of climate change will vary in their impact over time. Their incidence and geographical extent is relatively unknown. It may become very unstable and an unpredictable process involving both productive evolution and sudden instabilities. Major consequences are likely to include the melting of the polar ice caps, thermal expansion of the oceans to currents and flows, seawater was becoming more acidic, transferring to the atmosphere. On land, some regions will experience desertification, others will experience permanent induration and tundra. Permafrost is likely to melt and release high levels of methane, possibly in large amounts. Global climate will reduce land for habitation and will result in changing patterns of agriculture and fertility. While tropical diseases like malaria are likely to move forward into the north and into the temperate zones, and there will be an increased risk of extreme weather events threatening population areas, urban and farming regions with eccentric growing seasons, flooding and incredible storm damage. Climate change will remain highly politicized through the relationship between causes and effect, and is only likely to be understood as more evidence and computing power becomes available. Responses will be contested and affected only by self-interest.
Well, they were pretty much spot on there with their assessment of the reactions to it.
It is. So let's talk about the assessment also of globalization. In the next 30 years, the development of transactions conducted irrespective of physical distance between those engaged will continue to expand, changing and improving everyday life for millions of people. A key feature of global modernization will be the continuing internationalization of goods for marketing, services and labor, which will integrate geographically dispersed sets of customers and suppliers. This will be an engine for increased and accelerated economic growth, but will continue to be a source of risk, as local markets are increasingly exposed to destabilizing fluctuations of the wider global economy. These results will be facilitated by the rapid development of global telecommunications, resulting in a pervasive environment for information. The global population will be online all the time. There will continue to be winners and losers as the global economy, led by market forces, especially those in the labour markets, will be subject to ruthless laws of supply and demand. Life will, as a result, be highly competitive and dynamic. Socially looser forms of political, cultural, and economic association will multiply, whose existence will be largely virtual and disassociated with society, linking members who are physically dispersed who share common interests to seek competitive advantage by association. Politically, globalization will raise levels of interdependence between states and become increasingly integrated with a globalized economy.
Again, that's pretty much spot on with the prediction.
Well, it's not a prediction, it's probability.
What, the probability?
Well, yeah, again, the wills, the likely, the may. But the one I think was really interesting was global inequality.
Yeah, let's hear this.
Okay, so I'll read the intro with this, from this. While material conditions for most people are likely to improve over the next 30 years, the gap between rich and poor will increase, and absolute poverty will remain the global challenge. Despite rapid growth and significant per capita disparities will exist in countries such as China, India, and smaller nations and affluent Western economies. In some regions, such as sub-Saharan Africa, a fall in poverty may in fact be reversed. Differentiations between material well-being will be more explicit through globalization. Disparities between wealth and advantage will be more obvious, with the associated levels of grievances and resentments, with growing numbers of people likely to be materially more prosperous than their parents and grandparents. Absolute poverty and comparative disadvantage will fuel perceptions of injustice among those whose expectations are not being met. Increasing tension and stability, both within and between societies, resulting in expressions of violence, disorder, criminality, terrorism, insurgency, and they will lead to the resurgence of an anti-capitalist ideologies, possibly linked to religious, anarchic, nihilistic movements, and also populism and the revival of modern Marxism.
Now, when you're reading that, all I can think of was the riots.
Well, that's what we're seeing. And this was produced in 2007. We are seeing that the gap widen between the rich and the poor. You can't help but look at a paper these days and see the differences between those who are, the soup kitchens, like for instance the Kristian soup kitchen that is on some main street in some city. There's probably loads of them really.
Yeah.
The council basically is ordering them to go into a side street as not to disrupt the value of the homes around it.
Yeah, that's disgusting on its own merits. But...
Oh, we don't like this kind of thing, so we're just going to hide it on the corner.
Yeah. We don't want to see that you're feeding people who are in dire need, so we're gonna put you out of sight.
He also talks about the global media and information communications technology that will heighten the sense of grievance and marginalisation between those who have stuff and don't have stuff. Not just nationally but internationally. And we are seeing that. We're seeing how bad it is in some countries. We're seeing, for instance, through social media, what's happening in Kiev, what's happening in Venezuela, while the mainstream media is still struggling to catch up with that kind of live feed information.
Yeah, because through the power of the internet, we can actually see the people's viewpoints who are in those areas.
And everyone has a different viewpoint about everything, so there isn't just one. It's not just a black and white situation in this country. It never is.
No, it never is.
There's lots of different things happening, and lots of different groups coming together, lots of different groups disparaging from each other, and there are major implications around that.
All the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see what else is in this. But also within this section here, there's authorities will be challenged by changing demographics, in particular the impact of increasing youth population in developing nations and countries with poor unemployment prospects. Unfulfilled expectations will lead to vulnerability to populist and other extreme messages taking hold. Economic growth in developing countries is only likely to compel societies to re-evaluate the role of women who will play an increasing role in generating wealth. I mean, this is an important one as well. They're talking about energy, the energy challenges that countries are going to be going through. The demand of energy sources, hydrocarbon resources will be depleted to a certain degree. Reducing carbon emissions also stimulate intensive research to find alternative forms of energy.
I hope so.
Oh yeah, but these may, but they will not be limited to renewable fuel sources. Nuclear fusion later in the period. It says here the exploitation of extreme environments, the search for alternative energy sources will become urgent at a time when technology will permit more commercially viable space and hydro-atmospheric applications. As such, there is likely to be an increase in space exploration and exploration of extreme environments such as polar, deep ocean and deep underground will increase.
Well, we've already seen that.
We're starting to see that now. NASA's program through the 70s demonstrated the exploration to more remote and hostile environments is likely to be stimulated and helped by technological innovation. But that innovation will be driven out of the need to find more resources.
Because we can't really survive right now on no energy.
But we are seeing that effect because there is the change toward fracking.
Yeah. But
which is a very extreme view of how to get power.
It is a very extreme view.
But we are seeing that
damaging view as well.
It's very damaging. Well, we know this. You have to watch Fracking Nightmare. You just have to educate yourself, and you will find how damaging it is very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Just go and do a little bit of research, and you'll see almost immediately the kind of damage that can do.
Okay, so links are below. You'll find them on the website as well, as well as links to the documents themselves. So go and check them out. There's also a very brilliant guy who's been covering these in quite some depth, and his name is Daniel S. Tillen. I'll post a link to his website below. It's really worth having a look at. He's an investigative journalist, and he's the host of RT over in Latin America. He does a lot of research into the Bilderberg Group and a lot of stuff into trans-evolution, which is the technology moving evolution forward in different ways. Because we are technically the first species to change our own evolution.
Yes.
But he talks a lot about what's actually in these documents. This is actually where I found the 2040 document. It's actually off his website.
Well, I think we should jump into the next section of the show now.
Well, yeah, considering time is kind of pressing against us. So here we are. This is the Fatian corner of the rabbit hole that is reality. Rabbit holes really do have a lot of different corners, don't they?
Oh yeah, they have loads of corners. So.
Okay, Fatian story number 1 today. Sylvia, please read it out very clearly.
New Zealand Prime Minister confirms that he's not an alien.
Yes, apparently the Australian.
Why?
It feels like I'm on David Icke's website here. But New Zealand Prime Minister John Key has officially confirmed that he's not a reptilian shape-shifting alien at a press conference.
Wait, he actually went out and said to people this?
No, he called a press conference to announce this, to prove it, to demonstrate it. So
that kind of makes me wonder how many people have actually accused him of being one.
Mr. Key was forced to publicly deny rumours that he had a double life as an alien after an official request was made at his office.
What was he doing? Does he have a flying saucer in his backyard or something?
Possibly, these people are like, kind of military technology that they have. In New Zealand, man, you've got all that Pacific Ocean just to fly stuff over.
Oh, yeah. It'd be easy to hide things over the ocean.
So he says that, and I quote, "I've taken the unusual step of not only seeing a doctor, but I've also seen a vet. And both have confirmed that I'm not a reptile."
What? He's probably the first guy to actually do that to prove against it, because there's been quite a few people who've been accused of that, but that is a bit extreme as well.
It says alien bodyguards are far too costly. Mr. Warburg, a writer and musician, said he posed the questions, a bit of a joke, alongside serious requests as part of his research into UFOs. Now, he told 3 News that he was happy with the Prime Minister's response, but was frustrated his staff had waited 20 full working days before they got back to me.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's genius. Okay, so next one. But this one I think is fucking hilarious.
Okay, this one is...
Can you read the headline without laughing?
I'll try. Okay, this one is Prophet drowns during cleansing ceremony. His family blame mermaids.
Yes, this. I never. Where do I start with this? Basically, some fuck-faced, self-stylized, self-bloody claiming prophet last Wednesday, drowned in a river during a cleansing ceremony and gave residents a scare. Basically, this guy was a prophet. His name is Shimbashari. He was 31. He was from some apostolic sect. He met his fate around midday. He was attending with his congregation on the edge of the Rura riverbanks, where he was swept away by a strong current, officially. However, his family believes that Shimanashi was actually still alive and he was abducted by mermaids.
That's nuts. They saw his head bob under the water.
I didn't take it out! Oh, it's been taken away by little god people.
Listen how fish people want him. Bye bye.
Yeah, so basically, Shimashaki came to stay with us about a month ago. He's been telling us he had a spirit of a mermaid. He also said that the prophet had prayed for a cloth that was given to him and to always tie when around these waters. Yesterday he brought a new cloth, after which he had written his name on it, on the old one, and he said he had no longer use for it. He tied it today before he got into the water, and then was kidnapped by mermaids.
So what's going to come out of that then is, you need to have this sacred cloth on you when you go in the water, or the mermaids are going to kidnap you.
Pretty much, yeah. That doesn't sound as fucked up as Mormons, doesn't it? Wear the magic underwear, or you will be slapped.
Almost.
Oh man, just. Where do I go from that? Where do I go from that? Okay,
Right,
okay.
I can see a whole cult actually springing up from that.
Okay, next one. Okay, Islamic leaders order a fatwa prohibiting one-way trips to Mars. If you believe in Islam, you're not going to Mars.
And why are you not going to Mars?
Well, first of all, they don't even believe it exists. But a fatwa is a ruling that issued by Islamic scholars. Bear in mind, there's lots of different sects.
Yep.
And a recent ruling says participating in a one-way trip to Mars is as bad as committing suicide. According to the Kajit Times, the Fatwa Committee of the Great Authority of Islamic Affairs and Endowment of the UAE has issued a fatwa after determining a one-way journey would pose a risk to life. That would never be justified in Islam.
So I guess the Catholics aren't going there then either, if it amounts to suicide.
I guess because they would die there with the sin if they died while they were there.
Yeah, it would.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's extremely hazardous as it is. The thing is, there's going to be no shortage of people wanting to go.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, who's going to turn down the opportunity if given it to go to another planet?
Well, yeah, there was that Dutch company, what are they called, Mars One. They had like 200,000 applicants vying to take the trip, one-way trip.
Yeah.
I think they got it down to like 1,000 candidates, or whatever. I guess if there's any Muslim candidates, they might want to reconsider, no?
Yeah, they might want to politely decline. Religious terms.
Indeed.
If you actually had free will, you'd go.
Well,
Yeah.
Would you go to Mars?
I'd love to go to Mars. I'm not sure about a one-way trip though.
Well, I think it's a one-way trip, then you have to stay there.
Oh yeah, if it was a one-way trip, there'd have to be Terror Dome or something like that.
Well, I'm assuming that's going to be the technology what's going to happen, isn't it?
I hope so. I'd just love to see sunrise on another world.
To be a person to experience that, absolutely incredible. Now, I was recently bought a book by someone I really care about, and it's all about synchronicities, coincidences, things that happen at the same time. There happens to be one in the press published this past week by the Daily Mail, of all places. The story is that a church clock maintained by a dedicated doctor for 30 years stopped the moment he passed away.
Oh wow!
Now you say, well, it's a coincidence. These things happen.
I know it's a coincidence. I'm just saying that is a big coincidence.
Well, it looks like a coincidence. It looks like one. It's all down to probability, really. But we'll read the story. The church clock maintained by devoted doctor stopped 30 years at the same moment he passed away. It says he used to climb the narrow staircases for 30 years. And he died at his home, aged 92, surrounded by his family on New Year's Day. This was at St James's Church in Yorkshire. Apparently, at the very moment at 8:15, when he died, when he passed away, that's when the clock stopped. So, do you think there's something more to that?
I don't see why there would be.
I mean, you're saying, wow, it's amazing, there's always links and stuff.
Well, was it a wind-up clock or something?
There is a probability that two events will happen to appear to have a correlation. But that correlation, the clock could have stopped at any minute of the day. He could have died at any minute of the day. The correlation that happened to be together, that's the coincidence. It's just one of those things that has to happen. But probability says that actually it's going to happen to somebody. But the correlation is considered to be almost a miracle.
Oh, I see. Because there's the 12 numbers on the clock and there's a certain amount of minutes on each clock. There's 6 billion people in the world. It's highly likely that it will happen to somebody at some point.
Yes.
I see.
It's like there's a really good example to use there would be the probability of going to the same room with somebody who has the same birthday of you. What's the likelihood of that happening? And actually, it's only 1 in 26 that you will actually meet someone who actually has the same birthday of you. It's actually quite high. What's the percentage that you move away from each other? So, what's the chance of you meeting someone who has the same birthday as you? Well, it's like 90.91% or something. And that percentage clicks down whenever a new person is introduced to the room. And eventually it gets to a certain point where it actually becomes 50-50, which actually is when the 26th person enters the room. And probability dictates that it's therefore likely, 50% of the time, that you'll meet someone who has the same birthday as you. Birthday probability, sorry. So here you have that same kind of story happening, but it's now being revered as being a miracle.
It's not a miracle, it's a clock. I know.
But your view of that, again, a few minutes ago, was actually very different. It was, oh wow, that's interesting, that's amazing.
Oh no, that's why it was interesting, yeah, but afterwards I started thinking that it's probably more likely that it broke down when he died, or would have broken down shortly after he died, because he was the one who was maintaining it.
He doesn't have to wind it on a daily basis. Should he not do it?
It would have stopped anyway.
Yes, it's probably his own exertion about wanting to go and do it
that kept it going.
Yeah, because it's coming to the end of when it was needing to be wound again.
So it was actually more likely for that guy that it would happen.
Yeah, and 92 years old as well. Okay, and our final story of the day has to be the funniest one that I actually killed over laughing because I thought it was too damn funny, and it actually hurt. But it's all about China. They love China. Okay, the story it's a two-part story, shall we say. The first part of the story talks about an investigative journalist in China. Okay, and basically she's considered to be a newbie. So let's tell her story, right? So the story is an investigative journalism program. It's called Jiangxi TV. It's in China, and there's a show called Jiangxi Up Close, and it's become a laughing stock, right?
Right.
Okay, what happened is they found a mystery mushroom. Okay. The residents of the Chaichunchu village in the outskirts of the capital of the Jiangxi province says they came across a strange fungi-like object as they hit bedrock while drilling for a new well. Found a mushroom, right? Imagine how amazing that must be. So perplexed villagers decided to call the TV station to help. So they sent this reporter, and her name is Ji Yunfeng, to this sleepy little hamlet to get down to find out what was happening with what they've discovered, right? One villager who is quoted as saying, who was there at the fateful discovery of the unidentified object, told the reporter, "When we dug down about 80 meters deep, we fished out this long, fleshy object. It looks like it's got a nose and an eye, and we've got no idea what this is. Even our 80-year-old neighbour says he's never seen anything like it before."
Fair enough.
Okay, Yang then goes on to describe the curious object as she camera pans over it. Now, if you can see the YouTube version, I'm actually going to post the video into my video of the YouTube version. So go and have a look at this if you're viewing it there. On this side, she says, you can see what looks like a pair of lips. And on this side, there's a tiny hole that extends all the way to the back of this side. The object looks very shiny, it's very fleshy and very meaty. I've done my own research on the internet. And this is where it goes wrong.
Right.
Okay, she describes it as being a Lingzi mushroom called a teisu. Now, without skipping a beat, Ji chimes in again. She says she's done her own research. I love this. And she says this Lingzi is found deep in the Shanxi mountain range, deep underground, and hence it is rarely seen. And then she goes on to describe how Emperor Zheng Qihuan was on a hunt for the secret of longevity and eternal life. It says he discovered this Lingzi was the answer.
Okay, yeah.
But the thing is, though, viewers started ringing it immediately when they could instantly identify it.
As a...
When they...
Go on.
Well, they identified it as a double-ended dildo. It's a double-ended dildo toy with an artificial vagina at one side and a hole at the other end.
So somebody probably buried it out of embarrassment or something.
80 metres there. That's a bit extreme.
A bit. Wow.
Yeah, so
She must be so embarrassed.
Well, you know, you've got national TV coverage, international TV coverage, by the way, for tea and stuff.
Yeah.
You found a mushroom, you've done your own research, and you found out it was the mushrooms and lung activity.
It's really, really rare.
And
Don't see it very often.
it turns out to be a... Turned out to be a double-ended dildo.
Oh. See some of the pictures on here. I just love the fact she's got it in a bowl of water.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, look, it's in the water, man. It's soft and it's fleshy, it's meaty.
It clearly needs to be hydrated. Yeah.
Yeah, so eagle-eyed viewers apparently saw the report, immediately called in to tell them it was actually a double-ended masturbation toy. Do you think she still has a job?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they might have let her off because she was a newbie. Who knows?
Well, it says they actually issue a public apology on the station the next day.
We're sorry our new reporter got this so badly mixed up.
Yeah, she got the wrong end of the stick. Or mushroom.
Literally.
Okay, this is the rabbit hole that is reality. My name is Kristian Lander. This is Sylvia Wicks.
We're signing off on episode 21.
That's right, episode 21 is now completed, and we shall see you indeed on the next show.
We certainly shall.
Well, you shall see us. Anyway, you know what I mean.